story with students. So we are very privileged to have her here with us. So without further ado, I would like you to start wherever you want to start.
Okay. My name is Sylvia Weinkrantz, and of course I'm a Holocaust survivor, that's why I'm here now. And I'd like to begin to tell you about the family that I come from. I grew up in Poland in a middle-class family, a very good family. We were 3 sisters. My oldest, we were 4, but when the war broke out, we were 3. My oldest sister was married at the time with a child already, a 2-year-old little boy. And myself, I was 7.5 years younger than her. And a 3-year-old, and then I have another sister in Australia who was 3 years younger than myself. She was in Australia now. And luckily all 3 of us survived the war. And thanks to, I think, to one person. When the war broke out, we had heard about what's going on before the war even. We knew what was going on in Germany already. The Jews were being sent to concentration camps and exterminated like non-humans. And we knew what was going to happen to us. One day a man came in, he was a friend of the family, and he said, it was already in the ghetto. Of course, we were right away put in a ghetto. And the town that I come from was a small town. So the area that they encircled for a ghetto, where they fenced in, was a very small area. And all the Jews had to stay in that area. And we were taken in, excuse me, by families that lived there already. And of course, multiple families used to live in one apartment. We came into an apartment. We used to live outside the ghetto. Before the ghetto was created, we lived in the city. And but when the ghetto started, we were outside of it, so we had to go in there. We were put in an apartment with 2 other. We have 4 of us: my parents, my parents, my 2 sisters, my older sister with her husband and child, and my younger sister and myself. We all went in. They put us into a 1-bedroom apartment, and then we had to take in another couple, a young couple. The woman was pregnant, so we lived like 8 people, 9 people in 1 room and a bedroom. 1 bedroom and a kitchen. But of course, we would have survived if we could have stayed there. But we knew that soon there's going to be deportation, because we knew about the concentration camps. So while we were still in our apartment where we lived before the ghetto, a man came in one day and he saw us, and he says, you know what, you can save yourselves. Young women, you can save yourselves. And he told us about that if you go to Warsaw, which was the capital of Poland, and you register yourself, and the Germans had put up offices, they needed people to work. And they wanted people to come, young people, men and women, but of course not Jews, Christians, to come and register and go to Germany to work in Germany. And they were offering good positions, I mean, factory workers to factories and to households. So this man came in and told us about it. So we, when we got into when we were already in the ghetto, and we knew that they were gonna liquidate it. So a woman came in and I missed this here. When we were still not in the ghetto, a woman, we were recommended by a woman who came in and said she would save my nephew, my sister's little boy. She has 2 children. She says that she's going to take him in. And she did. She came one day and she took him. And when she saw me, she says, if the ghetto is going to be liquidated, which we knew it was going to be, he said, you can come to me. I'm going to save you too, because you don't look Jewish. I was a redhead. I had bright red hair and freckles. And little Jews, he said, you'll come to me and I'll save you. So when the ghetto was liquidated and everybody was taken to a camp, not taken, we had to walk for miles. It was at the time it was a working camp. People weren't killed there by, I don't remember anybody being killed there. It was a camp with, that we dug holes in the ground. It was supposed to water the holes that we dug. We dug them so deep that we encountered water, and the water was supposed to water up the fields. They had cornfields there and other fields, grain fields. That was supposed to be the reason that we did it. But of course we knew we were not going to stay there anyway. The weather was getting cold. It was already, the war broke out in September 1939. And this was already December, like the beginning of December or the end of November, I think. And the winters are very, very cold in Europe. In Poland, we were in eastern Poland, close to Russia. So, excuse me, where we stayed during the day, we dug those ditches, and at night we were in a sort of not a camp, it's like, what you call it, tents with bunks. And the men were separated from the women, the men went separately and the women. So we were there could have been 50, 60 women in one bunk, and one tent, and everybody had a bunk. And it was getting very cold, and it was quite impossible. We knew that we can't stay there. If we stay there, we're gonna all die. And but of course, one day trucks came up one day, and they took everybody away. We knew they were taking to concentration camps. But this woman who kept our child, she told me that that when they come, that anything happens, I should come to her. And she lived many miles away. So I remember my parents put me in an outside, we had toilets outside while we worked there in the fields where we dug those ditches. So they came one day, and so that day when the trucks came, my mother and my older sister came and put me in the toilet. They said, because my father always said he wants at least one person to stay alive to survive the war. One person of the family. And I was the one chosen because my older sister had a child and she wouldn't leave the child. And my younger sister was too young. She was always very close. She was very sick as a child, so she grew up being very close to my parents, and she was always watched over and, and worried over. So when the woman, when they came with the trucks one morning, and and everybody had gone into the trucks, my mother and my sister put me in the toilet. I said, you go to, this woman's name was Yaja, who kept my little nephew, my sister's boy. He says, you go there. She lived quite a few miles away from that camp. And so that's what happened. I was in that toilet, and all of a sudden, my sister, my older sister, whose child was in this woman's house, came and says, "I'm going to save myself. I want to get saved. I want to get saved too. I want to live because I have a child. He'll need me." So she, after the trucks left with all the other people, with my parents and my younger sister, the two of us walked out of that toilet and we started walking to this woman's house, which was, I don't remember how many miles, but many, many miles. We walked through the night, and in the morning we arrived there. So when we got there, she took me in, and she said she can't take my sister. So my sister walked away, and she went back to my hometown where we came from, because there were some Jews yet living that worked for the Germans, and their whatever they were there. noticed that they had that the Germans were there. So they had Jews working there. So my sister went there because she had no other place to go. By coincidence, she met a woman there, and she told her she was a Christian woman, and she got friendly with her, and that worked there. This is the one that worked there, and she said to her what situation she's in. She knew already. She knew about Jews, and she told her, and she asked her, she said, "Could you help me, by any chance, to get me some kind of a document, a birth certificate or something, so I could go register to go voluntarily to work in Germany?" Because they had, I think I mentioned that they had signs in the Christian areas that young people, young women and men, young boys and girls, or women and young women and men should come to work in Germany. So this woman that my sister got acquainted with provided her with some kind of a document. I don't remember what it was. It must have been a birth certificate. My sister went to Warsaw, to the city, to the capital of Poland, and they had agencies there. She went and she registered herself as a Polish girl, a Polish young woman. My sister was at the time, I think she was about 29, and that she wants to go to work to Germany. So they embraced it. They wanted her. They wanted people. So that's what happened. She went to Germany, and she was sent to a place where she was working in a sugar factory. And I don't remember the name. I think it was Frankenthal. And she was there, and she wrote me a letter while I was with her son, her little boy, and this the lady that took us in, the Christian lady. And she wrote a letter, and she said, of course she didn't write it openly, what's what, but she wrote it, and I understood what she meant. She says that she mentioned the name of someone, a Polish girl a neighbor of ours in Poland, and she says her name was Savera. She says, do you know when Savera got very sick, and she was sent to a sanatorium, and it turns out that was the best place for her. She got well there. She wrote a letter about Savera, meaning she meant me. That if I'm sick, I'm there. She referred to me as a sick person. I understood what she meant. That the only place to come is to come to Germany. She says there are wonderful places in this country, and if you register and you want, she says, and this Savera, she went there and she got well there, meaning that if I should go there, if I could go to Germany, and meaning herself, she wrote where she worked, and she was happy and all that, and she wrote it like in the third person in the name of this woman, and I understood what she meant. So when one day this woman that kept my nephew and me came in and said, I can't stay there no longer, because and I heard it through the wall too, that people are talking Jews, and one day, I don't remember what it was, that she wasn't there, and I was there just with the kids, her 2 kids and my nephew, and I heard this talking about Jews, and I said, this is the end, I can't stay there, I have to get out. So I just walked out, and I knew that I had a letter from my sister, and I knew that I could go and register to go to Germany. So I walked in the street, so I walked out, and I had a few dollars, not dollars, currency, Polish currency, and I was going to go to Warsaw, but I didn't know how to get to the railroad station. I had to take the railroad to go to, and I said to myself, if I find someone, if I stop people and start asking them, they might realize who I am. So I was walking, and all of a sudden I see a man that I knew. He used to buy, my parents had a leather store in Europe, leather that you make shoes out of. And he was a shoemaker, and he used to come in and buy shoes from me, not shoes, but leather to make shoes. Soft leather and hard leather. Hard leather is the sole, and soft leather was the top. And so I stopped him. And I said to him, you probably don't remember me, but I'm so-and-so. And he says, yeah, no, I know your parents. I knew your parents. So I said, could you please help me to go to Warsaw? And I told him, I want to register and go away and work in Germany because my sister's there already. And he did. He took me, he said to me, I have things to take care of yet. And this was like a little town with a wooded area, a lot of forests and woods. And so he said to me, you walk here on the edge of the woods. You showed me an area where I should walk. He said, I'll be back about 9 o'clock. I don't remember, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And you follow me. I'll go to the rail station. I'll pick up 2 tickets. And you'll follow me, and then you'll come with me to Warsaw, and I'll bring you there. And that's what happened. But it didn't happen that easily. He didn't come 9 o'clock. It was already very late at night, and I thought he's not coming. And I was walking, and it was cold. It was December, and it was freezing. And I said to myself, where am I to go? Where should I go? What should I do with myself? And so I went in. I saw a woman across the street that came out from a house. I said, let me go over and ask her what time it is. I didn't have a watch. And she said to me, I'll go in the house and I'll come out and I'll tell you. And she came out and she told me the time. And then she says, you know, you're Jewish. I said, I'm not Jewish. Why are you telling me I'm Jewish? You are Jewish, she says, but I'm not going to denounce you. I'm not going to tell anybody. I was just like you, lucky. Anyway, this man showed up and we went to Warsaw. And he put me into a hotel, and he went to his, turned out that I found out later that he was hiding a mother and a daughter, Jewish people. He was just an exceptional person. So he put me in a hotel, and he said, tomorrow morning I'll come, and we'll go to Warsaw, and you go, no, that was in Warsaw already, yeah, that was in Warsaw. That I'll bring you to that place, I'll show you where you have to register, and that's what happened. I went in and I registered, and I went to Warsaw. I went to Germany. First they put us in the school, because until they got a group of people, and they sent us, and I was sent to a place not far from the Belgian border, which was northwest Germany. And I was put into a factory where they were making ammunition boxes. Before the war, it was a furniture factory, but during the war they were making ammunition boxes. And I was there, that was the end of 42, and we were 20 girls there. And one of the women was not older, she was in her 30s, but to us at that time she was older. She was doing the cooking and all that. And she recognized me, right? She came over to me, she says, you're Jewish. So I said, yes, I am, but please don't tell. But as it turned out, it spread all over. So one day I came to the factory where I was working, where we were making the boxes for ammunition. And a German came over work and he said, you know, I worked in Poland and I know you're Jewish. I said, no, he didn't say I'm Jewish. He said, I know you worked in Poland and I know what they did with the Jews, what happened to the Jews and this and that. So that was the end. And the next day I left. I went on the train and I went to the train and I was on the train. Oh yeah, the woman, when we lived in that, when we worked in that factory, there was, before the war, that room was like a dancing hall. And we were there, we had, what is it called, bridges?
Cots? Bunks.
Not cots, one on top of the other.
Bunks.
Bunks.
Yeah, bunks.
So she had a little boy, not a little boy, at the time I was 20 and 42, and he was like 15 years old or something. There was a door from that, where we lived, from that room to her apartment. And she was a single woman, she must have been in her 50s, maybe 40s. She had no husband. She had a bar downstairs, and upstairs was the living quarters for her. So her son, this boy, this 14, 15-year-old boy, used to come in to us and just bring in, he had a record player, would bring in the record player and play and all this. So I became very friendly with her. I used to help her darn socks and stuff. This woman from she had a bar. And so one day I came into her and I told her, I used to go into her apartment. She used to give me some food because we didn't have enough food. And she said, and I said to her, I have to run away. I didn't tell her exactly I'm Jewish, but I said, I can't stay here, I have to run away. And she understood it. Apparently she knew, but she never told me because I never told her. So she sent her boy, that 15-year-old boy, to the railway station to get me a ticket. I should leave the next morning. It was just pure luck, a German woman. And that's what happened. And I was on that train, and I was going to go closer to where my sister lives, where my sister was working, but she was there already. Did I tell you about my sister? Yeah, I told you. And on the train, an inspector came in, and asked Ausweise bitte, documents bitte. And I had a Polish a birth certificate that this man in Poland who helped me gave it to me. So I gave it to him, and so he said, come out, you know, the railroad cars have like hallways here, and the cars in the front. So he took me out from the car and said, come here in the hallway. And he said to me, show me the certificate, the Ausweis, the document. So I showed him, and I translated to him. I could speak German because I learned in school German for 2 years, and then I was, since '39, we were with the Germans. We were occupied by Germans, and this was 42. I spoke pretty good the German, and I translated it for him what it is, I told him. So he said, where are you going? I said, I lost my transport. I came with a transport from Poland, and I went out to get something, and when I came back, the train was gone. So I took the next train, and I'm going, I have a friend, I don't want to say a sister. I said, I have a friend that, because if I would have said a sister, whatever happens to me, they would get her too. So I said, I have a friend that works there in the city, and I'd like to go there. So he said to me, you know what, he said, I'm going to Vienna. You know, he said, right away, he said, ich werde Ihnen helfen. I will help you. Right away, he said to me. So he said, I'm going to Vienna, and that's where he lived. And he said, and I have to stay in Vienna for a few days, and then I'm due to go back. Because he was like an inspector on trains. So I went with him to Vienna, and we come in, he brings me to his house, and a woman opens the door. A beautiful, beautiful building. They must have been very well to do. And he says to me, ich habe ein Füchschen gefangen. I've caught a little fox, he said to his mother. And a woman opened the door, an elderly woman, and another woman, a sister. And they welcomed me. And I remember she even said to me, did you like to take a shower? And I never had a shower in my life because we never had a shower in Poland. And this was my first shower that I took there. And I stayed there for a few days. And then on the way back, when his duty was coming up again, he dropped me off where I wanted to go, a city that my sister had told me. And I stayed, he dropped me off there. And I went I asked for the Arbeitsamt, is for the agency where you're registered to go to work. And I went to the agency, and he gave me a place, not in a factory, but to go to work for an elderly couple. The woman was, they had 2 sons. The woman was paralyzed. She was bedridden. She had a stroke or something. And he was an old man. He must have been at that time maybe around 80. Well, today 80 to me is not old, but that time he was old. And he had a soap factory, and he was supplying soap for the military, brown soap, plain brown soap, and not fancy soap. So that's why he was entitled to help. And so I was there, and I stayed there till the war ended with this couple. But of course, this is an abbreviated version of what I went through.
What do you say? Wow. Questions? Don't be shy now.
Have any questions?
I'm sure they have.
What happened to your nephew, the one who stayed?
What happened to Adam? Adam, what happened to Adam?
Oh, Adam is in Australia.
Well,
He
tell them how you found Adam after the war.
What happened?
What happened to Adam?
Yeah.
We had to get him.
We came back after the war, and of course, the first thing, my sister and I went back to our hometown and looking for Adam, and we couldn't find him. It turned out that the woman who kept him, my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, before the war had a lumber factory with partners. So when the war ended, she didn't figure that we're going to survive. So she figured she has the child, so she'll become the owner of the factory. So it turned out that, of course, the Russians came in and took away everything, but she didn't know that at the beginning. So when we came back, we couldn't find her. She wasn't there. And just by luck, somebody told my sister. I didn't go with her to look for the baby. They had not organization, but the Holocaust survivors were like get at one place. So I was there with the other Holocaust survivor I stayed, and she went to look for Adam, and she couldn't find him. But somehow, everybody she met one time and another time, someone was telling her, no, she said she's going there. That she left here, she was there and there. So my sister kept following one place after the other. She traveled, she chased it, I think, for 2 weeks or so, or 10 days or 2 weeks, until she found it. And when she found it, she wouldn't give him back. She had hidden him in the woods.
And this is now how many years later? From the time that she gave Adam to the woman, how many years later? This is like 4.
We gave him 42, this was 45, 3 years.
3 years later.
She kept him for 3 years, yeah. But my sister found him. And he wouldn't want to go to her because she antagonized him against her. He called her dirty Jew. He called my sister dirty Jew. But of course, she took him. And we went back to our hometown, and my parents had hidden a lot of leather. We had a leather business. My parents had a leather business. So we had hidden a lot of leather before the war broke out. My parents had hidden it, and we had access to it. We got out some of it. Most of it was taken out, but leather was very, very valuable during, I guess during the war too, but after the war. Because people had to have shoes. I mean, you could take an old piece of garment and fix it. But shoe, if it tore, you couldn't fix it. You couldn't be without shoes. So we sold it, and we had money. So that was good.
Did your little sister survive?
What did you say?
Did your younger sister, did she survive?
Yeah, my younger sister survived in Bergen-Belsen. My parents were killed in Poland in a camp, and she was taken to Bergen-Belsen. She survived. She is now in Australia. She's in a wheelchair. They beat her severely in Bergen-Belsen, and they broke her spine in one place. And but she got married after the war, and she has a son and daughter. And she's in a wheelchair.
How did you find your younger sister? Where did you
How did you find her, your younger sister?
We came back, and she came back to our hometown. You know.
People tried to go back to where they were from to see if there was anything left, if anybody, because you figured they would all come home, if they'd come back to see if anyone survived.
Anthony, you had a question?
Yeah. What was it that you did after the war, after the end?
What did you do after the war?
Oh, after the war, there was a cousin of ours from another, that grew up in our home, a little girl. She was much younger, about 3-4 years younger than me. And when we came back to Poland, we heard that she survived with my parents. Well, my sister survived, she survived. And she was in not a home, I don't know if it's called a home. It's like where they kept young children, you know. So I went to see her, because when my sister and I came back, we found a letter that we sold, and we had money. So I wanted to see how she is, and I figured I'll give her some money because I knew she was all by herself. So while I went there, on the way back by train, I was sitting in the train, and a young man walked in. That's the young man, so young. And of course, that's how I met my husband. He never let go of me. He was much older than I. He was 14 years older than I. But
And he had lost.
never let me out of.
All right, tell the story. Tell the story of how Dad hooked you.
Well, I don't know myself.
Yes.
Then he wanted you to meet the other friend.
Oh, yeah. Came up where I was, and he said he's going to. The train. He said to me. He said, you know what? I know a young guy that you would love. I would love for you to meet him. And I said, okay. And I didn't think I'll ever see him again. But when he came up and one day, and so then he came.
So you were supposed to meet him up. You were going to get together. You were going to meet them somewhere.
Oh yeah, in the restaurant.
Right.
Yeah. He came up to where I was there, and he says, "This young boy, we meet him in a restaurant. We're going to go have 10." It was actually like a coffee shop, not a restaurant. He said, "We'll go. We'll have some coffee there, and he's waiting there for you." And we went there, and we come in, and there was nobody there. And then it was.
That's fun. Melanie, you
I
have
had a
a
good life. Brought up to beautiful, wonderful people. My brother, and my son, and the grandchildren, 4 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren.
When the shoemaker took you to Warsaw,
I can hear it.
Talk a little louder.
when the shoemaker took you to Warsaw, how were you able to register with the agency? To work
How
in
did you get to
Germany?
register? Because how were you able to register in Germany? Where did you get the paper from?
Oh, in Germany it was no problem. I was sent from Germany, from Poland, from Warsaw. I was sent first with a group of young women.
But how did you get, Mom, how did you get the paper so that you look like a German, like your paper,
No,
like a birth certificate?
I told you this man that I met in the street. When I walked out of this woman that kept my nephew, I walked the street and I was going to go to the railroad station, and I didn't know where the railroad station is, and I didn't have any papers. So a man passed by that I once saw. It's a matter of fact, I saw him through a window. I say he wasn't there. I came into the house where I was there with my nephew. He was helping Jews. And he came in, he was looking for someone there. Someone told him that somebody's supposed to be there. So when he came in, I would go into a closet. I couldn't see, because she didn't want anybody to know that I'm there. And he walked out, I saw him through the window. And then when I left her house, after I heard the voices, Jews, I walked out and I was going to go to the railway station. And he walked, I met him I saw him just sit walking, because I walked over and I said, you know, my name is so, and I saw you in Yaja's house, whatever her name was. that I saw you, and I know you're helping Jews, and I'd like to go to Warsaw to register to go to Germany to work. And he said he'll help me. And I think I mentioned it. He put me into a hotel. He took me to Warsaw, put me in a hotel. And then he came the next day, and he brought me to this office, and I registered. And they put me in a school. They gathered all the people, all the women or men that were going to go to Germany in a school. And from there they took us by train to Germany. And they brought me, and I had no choice where to go. I was there, they left us was 20 girls, we were 20 young girls there, working in this, before I told you, they were making ammunition boxes.
What was your name? What was your name during the war?
Maria Wojnakiewicz.
Questions? Yes.
How did you end up coming here? Like
To the United States. How'd you get to the United States?
Oh, I was married already and had my son, and everybody wanted to go to America, of course. And we were in Germany, and also not under very good circumstances. We had one little room, we lived there, and my husband couldn't make much of a living there, couldn't work too much and all that. And one day my husband came up and he said, you know what? They register to go to America. You can register to go to America. I said, what do you mean you can register? They're telling me, go down and register. And he went down and registered, and within a few months he came here.
So why is it that you got here, but your sisters had to go to Australia?
Well, my sister went. My sister went to Australia because my youngest sister's husband, she got married after the war. He was telling me, go down and register. And he went down and registered, and within a few months he came here.
So why is it that you got here, but your sisters had to go to Australia?
Well, my sister went. My sister went to Australia because my youngest sister's husband, she got married after the war.
When you went back to like the hometowns, when you did, what were the conditions like of like the
What?
What were the conditions back in Koznitz when you went back after the
Yeah,
war?
it was normal. It was the apartment that we lived in. Somebody else lived there, and the city wasn't damaged. It wasn't bombarded or anything. It was normal.
My brother, you're going to say, go ahead.
You know, I brought a picture of the house, and I didn't bring it here. I brought to show it to you. My son went back to our hometown a few months ago. He went on a European trip, and they went there. And he took pictures of the building.
And the building is still standing, as you can see, still exactly where
Yeah, but the building looks much nicer now than then.
Obviously, they've renovated it, but it's actually still standing, and you can tell that that was the same. So she was able to recognize it.
Any more questions?
Do you believe that humankind is good at heart?
What'd you say?
Say that again?
Do you believe that humankind is good at heart?
Do you believe that humankind, mankind is good at heart?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that most people are good at heart. And of course here and there you find some vicious people, but majority of people are good.
What do you value the most right now?
What do you value the most right now?
My family is my biggest treasure. My son and family, my daughter and family, my biggest treasure. That's all.
Always has been. Always has been.
Well, I'm 92 years old, so whatever I have left, I hope I can function normally. And I don't need to be a burden to my
She still
children.
drives.
Oh,
I said you still drive.
Yeah, I have a car. I have a car. I can't get rid of it. I can't. It's just like my.
Security blanket.
Any more questions?
I go around the corner to get a pleasant.
How exactly do you learn to overcome or forgive people for such a great tragedy or
How do you learn to overcome and forgive people for such a terrible thing? You know,
I don't know. I think it's human nature to forgive. It's human nature. I mean, I can't even blame, you know, there's one thing though, that if I go to buy something and I see it's made in Germany, somehow I'm reluctant to buy it and I don't buy it. But I don't feel animosity against the Germans today because it's not their fault what happened. It goes back to already 70 years ago, so 75 years ago. Can't blame people today what happened then.
Yes, Stephanie.
Did you end up marrying your husband? Like, was he Jewish as well?
Was Dad Jewish?
What?
Was your husband Jewish?
Oh yeah.
Then where
He
did
was
you
Jewish.
guys
Yeah, there are a
marry?
lot of mixed marriages. No, my husband was Jewish.
Where did you guys marry?
Where'd you get married?
Where?
Where? In Poland or in Germany?
No, in Poland.
You met Dad in Germany though, right?
I met him before I in Poland.
Well, that train was in Poland?
Of course I met him.
There was there's so much involved in your stories that
Like, after going over with your husband able to have like a traditional Jewish wedding or just,
Did you have a traditional Jewish wedding?
or just a normal?
No, I just wanted to tell you, I had, all I owned is a skirt and a blouse. That was my dress-up outfit. And I don't know if anybody else I owned something. But I remember we went to a rabbi, and I put on that brown skirt and a beige blouse. I have a picture.
You do?
Yeah, of course, Nathan is old. My son is old. When we moved down to Florida, I left all my albums in my son's house. Yeah, oh yeah, I have a picture. I have a picture of your father and myself right at the Yeah, I'm wearing a brown blouse, a beige, like an off-white blouse, and a brown skirt. Yeah.
Questions?
But we did all right. We came to America, best country in the world. And my husband, we came in '49, and he got a job in a zipper factory where they make zippers. And that was we came like in the summertime, I think July. And the following year, and he worked in that factory for about a year. Now, following October, a year later, October, he opened a small factory with a partner, with I think 3 or 4 girls who worked there, a few hand machines that are making zippers by hand. But eventually it changed to a pretty big place with about 30 people and 35 people working in season.
When you came to America, what was the fair, where did you come, like, what state?
Where did you go when you came to America? Where were you?
Oh, well, we came, they put us in Hayas. I don't know, this is a Jewish organization.
Oh, where? What city?
So we were there, we were living there for,
What city?
in New York. New York, we came to New York. And because we had a cousin who came earlier already. He came right after the war. And I was in touch with him after the war. So I knew where he lived. So we were in Hayas, and it was located in this street
In New York.
in New York, Manhattan. And but we came during the day. We walked to my cousin's house, and we stayed there with them. And he had, as a matter of fact, there was I don't know if you're in New York City. It's a really does it. At that time already, it was the poorest section of New York, and so he had an apartment. He lived on the 3rd floor, and there was an empty apartment on the 1 flight up. So he took that apartment before we came for us, and we paid $20.70 rent a month. So he had paid, I think, for 2 months rent. We gave him back the money. Then later, when my husband started working, and so we lived on the 4th floor. We lived there for 2 years, and then we moved to Brooklyn. We got an apartment in Brooklyn, in a 2-family house. It was 1 flight up, so we went 2nd floor. And and the landlady was on the first floor. And that's where my son was.
No, maybe it was born in Germany.
They were going to Germany.
I was born.
That's where you were born.
One question over here.
Yes.
Yes,
You want to ask something, Gallup?
Yes, without getting into your banking, how much money did you come to the United States with?
How much money did you have when you came
We
here?
had $1,030, but my husband lost $30. the $1,000 he had hidden someplace. I don't remember where.
Before the war.
Somewhere. But the $30 he kept like, if you get in case we have a child, you know, in case we need a few dollars, we didn't know what the situation was going to be like, and he lost it. And we're heartbroken over it. But it was okay because he started working. Soon after we came, he started working. He was making $40 a month, I remember, a week, $40 a week. And as I said, just a year and about 15, 16 months later, he opened a little place in the apartment.
Melanie had, I'm sorry, Melanie had a question, then Stephanie, and then the other Stephanie. Melanie, go.
How from Brooklyn did you come to Florida?
How'd you get from New York to Florida?
Oh,
With all the other
no, we didn't live in Brooklyn. We bought a house in '56. We bought a house in Queens. We lived in Queens. We bought the house in '56 and we sold it 2001.
And why'd you come to Florida?
We came to Florida because my daughter and son-in-law decided they got married and moved down to Florida. My son-in-law was admitted to Florida, I don't know which, not university, law school.
UM Law.
Which one? My son-in-law. So they got married right after they got after school, after they graduated Syracuse. They both attended Syracuse University. That's where they met. And there was no way. They got married right after they graduated, and they went down to Florida because he was accepted here. And they stayed here. So. And we lived in the house till 2001. My husband was, we bought an apartment after they moved down. A few years later, we bought an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment here in Florida, in Miami, because we wanted to come for the winters here. And then we came. Then, in 2001, my husband was very sick already. He used to come here for the winter, and we had the house in Queens. But then we couldn't drag him off back and forth. It was too much. He was too sick. So we sold the apartment in what year? Yeah, 2001. And 2002 he passed away. We moved down. Yeah, we moved down in 2001. And he passed away the following year, 2002. My husband passed away. And I'm here. In the same apartment.
When you came to America, how was the transition from Germany to?
How was it to transition? Was it hard to?
Did you know English, or did you have to?
When you came from Germany, from Europe here, how was it to transition to get used to it? And did you know any English?
No, didn't know any English, but we learned it immediately. We lived on Remington Street. That my cousin had gotten this apartment for us, and there were a lot of Jews there. And a lot of Jewish stores that you went in, you could buy anything to speak. You could speak Yiddish. But we picked up the language very quickly. We were young. When you're young, my husband started going to school at night, and I went, I think, once or twice because I had the baby. I couldn't leave the baby at night, and he after work went to school. I didn't go for long. No, we picked up the language very quickly. But of course, I still have an accent, right?
Okay, Stephanie.
Once you moved to America, did you ever go back to visit your hometown?
Have you ever been back
Yeah, we went
to
back.
Poland?
We went back right after.
No, after you came to the United States. Have you ever been back to Poland since then?
No. Wait a minute.
No, you haven't.
When did you go back with Vera?
To Poland? No. Once you came to the United States.
No,
She's
from the
asked.
United States.
No, never. Once they left the United States, they never went back.
No, we went back right after the war.
Yeah, but never.
Going back to your life in Poland and Germany, during the struggles like that, what was was it that you did to keep your spirits up, like boost morale? I know like you met people, but you were alone, so.
What did you do, like you were alone so much of that time when you were, during the war and you were hiding and hoping that nobody would know who
No, I
you were?
wasn't hiding.
What did you do to keep your spirits up? Like, how did you stay?
You know, when you're young, it's different. I was with 20 other, when I was working in Germany with 20 other girls. We used to go to, there was a Polish club we used to go in, and it was a problem too, because everybody got a boyfriend. And at first I didn't go to the club. So we worked Saturdays half a day and then Sunday, so I didn't go because I felt strange. I was afraid. I didn't know. I don't remember why, but I didn't go. And then the girls started to remark and talk about it. They said, "How come you don't go to the club? Why don't you come with us?" And I realized that by not going, I make myself look different. So I started going to the club and got myself a boyfriend. Very nice guy. I'll tell you what, when we had off Saturday afternoon and Sunday. So he used to come Saturday and we walked around and we used to, but there wasn't much you could buy. Because people, even the Germans had, what do you call it, cards, food was
a ration card.
Ration cards, yeah. They couldn't buy. So we walked around and it was nice, it was beautiful. The winters are very mild. You didn't need really winter clothes there. It was very nice.
One last question?
And then when I,
One more question.
Yeah.
What's the best memory you have of your family and your sisters?
What is the best memory you had before the war? Before the war of your family and your sister?
we had a beautiful family. My parents, I think, were the best people ever. And we were very comfortable. And it was a beautiful family life, very close-knitted family. My sister got married, and she lived within a walking distance. As a matter of fact, she lived in a house that my parents owned. It was like a two-bedroom house with a store. The store was rented out, and she lived in the 2 bedrooms and the kitchen. And we were very close-knit. So Friday night and Saturday, till the war broke out, they would come and have dinner with us. And then when the war broke out, my sister and husband and child and the little boy came with us, and we were all together. We wouldn't be separated. But life before the war was nice. It was very anti-Semitic. Poland was a very anti-Semitic country. But somehow I guess we've gotten used to it, and we just went on with life the best way we could. We had some very, very nice Christian friends and neighbors that are very good friends, very good neighbors.
Well, I think we have a couple of minutes left for this period to be over. I want to
It's
thank
almost the
you
end of this
so
period,
much.
so these students will be leaving.
Okay.
And there'll be another group coming in.
Oh, another group.
Can you do it?
Yeah, it was nice talking to you.
Yes.
A nice bunch of girls and boys. Very nice.
Okay.
Love you.